An experience I have had too many times, so once is too much in my opinion, is being put in seclusion. The first time I was only 22 years old, highly suicidal, emotionally distraught and floridly psychotic, hence my admission to a locked ward. The staff thought it safest to contain me and led me into a small, dirty, smelly room with a safety-wired yellow window you could not see out of, an old stained mattress on the floor and a heavy wooden door with huge cross-locking beams and bolts. It had a clear, small, grubby perspex slat in it that you could be viewed through. No one would hear you scream. My immediate concern was that it was a couple of rooms and corridors away from the nurses' station, but directly outside the male, unlocked, open dormitory. Staff said I had to leave my shoes outside the door, which then indicated to any male patient wandering through that I was in there. Staff said they would not lock me in, it was just a precaution for my safety. I told them I was scared of being raped. They laughed at me. Their solution was to shut and lock the door on me and so no one else had access. That was to me my first long, drawn-out and torturous night in a seclusion room, though the word cell would describe it better. I did not sleep at all. I was so terrified of the voices tormenting that I could hear seeping out of the dark in the air around me. Now the voices were in the closed room the staff had locked me in. There was no hope of escape or distraction. I thought my heart was going to literally pound out of my chest. Over the years, seclusion practices have become more streamlined and documented, but in my opinion, from a patient perspective, they are just as brutal. During my last hospital stay, I was repeatedly secluded by a mob of nurses. I was manhandled to out the back with blue-gloved restraint, having my nakedness witnessed by the local security guard, who I would see in the local shops when I was free in the community. My crime was simply refusing medication. I would be dragged into an isolated, sterile room, removed from everyone else, stripped and put into ward pyjamas that did not fit, partially exposing my breasts. I was then pinned to a mattress on the floor, a nurse's knee in my back constraining my breathing. I was forcibly injected and sedated with substances I perceived as a threat to my body and my mental well-being. I was degradingly tossed a cardboard bedpan for a toilet in full view of anyone passing by in the corridor, which doubles as a thoroughfare for staff. I was then left to be observed through cold planes of glass and spoken to through barriers, not directly face to face. The safety checks conducted every 15 minutes by a nurse consisted of looking at you from the window externally with no communication. I sheltered under the solitary sheet with my face turned to the wall. How would they even know I was alive, let alone inquire if I was okay? I did indeed feel like a caged animal. Are we that different from using tranquilizer darts at the zoo? Are we, as patients, so dangerous and wild that staff cannot deal with us in other more humane ways? If you do not treat a person with basic respect, how can you expect them to interact in a therapeutically and collaborative relationship ongoing with the treatment team? After decades of being beaten down by the system and mental illness combined, I came to a very low and wretched place, and that place was actually me. I could no more step away from it than remove me from myself. The psychological harm done by restraint practices can condemn what was a self-determined and contained person to that of a submissive victim or reactionary hostile being. The very systems that were supposed to be treating my mental illness were in fact contributing to my downfall, from credible functioning citizen to a view of myself, and I suspect some others, of being subhuman, not to be taken at face value and lacking any social respect. At this point, human rights and basic dignity consist of some vague abstract charters on paper with no effect or influence on a consumer's day-to-day life or mode of existence. So what then could turn this sorry state around? People. This is where the community can help lobby for the removal of seclusion and other degrading restraint practices, such as chemical restraint, that demoralise and dehumanise those subject to them. We must treat consumers with compassion and offer meaningful support to help empower them to deal with the symptoms of their illness. Mental illness can be truly cruel, causing extreme distress. Do not compound this with abusive practices. This does not have to be a life sentence of being a victim of horrific circumstance. The worst situations in life can have a silver lining and paradoxically be the foundation of growth, hope and triumph over what may at times seem like overwhelming soul-destroying odds. I will never fully overcome the trauma of seclusion, restraint and forced treatment. However, I have been able to develop strengths in other areas. These experiences have given me compassion for others in distress and a drive to work ethically in a human rights framework. Physical institutions, restraint practices, seclusion events and powerful legislation like the Mental Health Acts 1986 and 2014 can lock you up, take away your freedom and basic human rights, even destroy your mind with excessive medications and ECT. But they cannot overcome the human spirit of one being touching another. I have been on a treadmill from utter degradation and baseness to revival and resilience through interaction and relationships with others outside of myself. It is people who reach in to warm the heart that has gone cold from endless desperate battles over loss and deprivation of humane life. Looking for a friendly face in a sea of medical practitioners and clinicians ruling my life, I was fortunate enough to find individuals within the system courageous enough to stand up and speak out, who rejuvenated my hope for a dignified and meaningful life. My current role as a senior consumer consultant at Forensic Care has brought me full circle. I now work with other staff to provide better outcomes for consumers and empower those consumers to have a voice in what sort of treatment and services they receive. For me, the aim is to be person-centred and focused in everything we do. Service provision is tailored to individuals and emanates from them and their needs, rather than being inflicted abstractly on an unwilling soul. I encourage staff to see the human being in front of them, not the diagnosis or risk category. I believe it is only when we relate to people as individuals and make that personal connection that we can overcome the alienating effects of a crisis-driven, broken psychiatric system. Instead of defaulting to restraint and seclusion to contain and control, we should encourage common connection, understanding and build on consumer strengths. We need to abolish seclusion and the regressive culture underpinning such negative restraint practices. People can dehumanise other people within the legal structures and social justifications of our established institutions. It is not just, it is outdated. It is time to re-establish the person and humanity to nourish a true community.